A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are with the 13th International Conference on Business and Information, the ICBI 2022. And now we have come into one of the most looked forward to and one of the most awaited segments of ICBI 2022. And this is the Technical Forum of International Conference on Business and Information 2022. This session will walk you through some amazing insights of these outstanding personalities that we have here today. And first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, let me now cordially invite the co-chair of ICBI 2022, Dr. Saroja Vanigasekara, Senior Lecturer, Department of Human Resource Management, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies of University of California, to extend a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you, Harshi. Good morning to all of you. So it is a great pleasure to me to address this gathering. So first, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight the importance of this technical forum. This is a flagship event which will be held concurrently with a main conference, International Conference of Business and Information. So mainly this event provides a platform to professionals and academics to share their valuable insights, which creates an environment to the participants to make a blended discussion on theories and practices. In an era, we identified the climate risk. The entire world is suffering. So the theme of this technical forum is business resilience and climate change. No doubt, our industry experts may have precious thoughts to share with us, and I hope this will be a grateful and fruitful event to all of us. Without taking much time, first, I would like to warmly welcome Dr. Narada Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, heads of the departments, professors, senior lecturers, our invited guest, and the co-chair from Dhaka University, Bangladesh, Associate Professor Shobhana Barua and Dr. Subodh Debanath to this event. Next, I humbly welcome our key personalities and industry experts to this forum, Mr. Mohan Tantirige, Senior Vice President and Group Financial Controller, John Keel's Holdings PLC, Mr. Richard Prina, Head of Sustainability Operations for Aitken Spence Hotel Management, Mr. Randiva Malalasuriya, Director, CEO of CBL Natural Foods Cluster, Ms. Lilanti Delgado, Vice President, Human Resources at the Union Bank of Colombo PLC, Mr. Sanjeeva Chulakumara, Director and Board Member, INSEE EcoCycle Lanka Limited, EXCO member, Sime City Cement Lanka Private Limited, and the session moderator, Senior Lecturer, Dr. Sugit Patabendige, to this awaiting moment. Finally, a respectful welcome to all participants today. Before commencing the ceremony, I invite Ms. Harshi Ekanayaka to introduce our industry experts to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your words. And ladies and gentlemen, without taking much time, I'm going to invite all the dignitaries that we have here today to take their seats here, and let me put across their profiles. First in line, we have Mr. Mohan Tantirige, Senior Vice President and Group Financial Controller in John Keel's Holding PLC. Mr. Mohan has been the Group Financial Controller since 2019 in John Keel's Holding PLC. Prior to joining the company in 2007, he worked for Ernst & Young. Mr. Mohan is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He is currently acting as the chair for Sustainability Disclosure Standards Committee at CA Sri Lanka. Mr. Mohan completed his degree from the University of Srijawadhanapura and also holds an MBA from the same university. Moreover, he serves for some committees and the task force member as well. And next in line, we have Mr. Randiva Malasurya, the Director CEO of CBL Natural Foods Cluster, Ceylon Biscuit Limited. Mr. Randiva is a chartered environmentalist who previously served as a CEO of Chemonix PLC in CIC Holdings, the Managing Director, Lafarge Maldives Private Limited, and the General Manager at Geocycle at Holcim Lanka Limited. Mr. Randiva is currently reading for his DBA in the area of circular economy at AIT Thailand and has completed his MBA from the University of Cardiff Metropolitan and a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Srijawadhanapura. He is also holding several positions and serving as a member of a number of associations, committees, and councils. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Lilanti Delgoda, the Vice President, Human Resources at Union Bank of Colombo, PLC. She holds a MSc in Human Resource Management and Development, obtained from the University of Salford, and is also an IPMA HR Senior Certified Professional. Obtaining the qualifications from Chartered Institute of Personnel Management and Sri Lanka Law College, she served as a HR professional and attorney at law to the industry for 22 years in leading organizations such as National Development Bank PLC and SoftLogic Group of Companies. She is also holding several positions in committees and associations who has also been recognized by a number of professional bodies. And we also have Mr. Sanjeeva Shulakumara, Director and Board Member of INSEE EcoCycle Lanka Limited, EXCO member of Siam City Cement Lanka Private Limited, and a chartered environmentalist. Mr. Sanjeeva is reading for his DBA at University of Kelaniya and has completed his MBA from University of Australia Institute of Business Australia and a BSc from the University of Peradeniya. He is a council member of Institute of Environmental Professionals Sri Lanka and corporate life member of the Institute of Supply and Materials Management. And we also have Mr. Rishad Prina, the Head of Sustainability Operations for Aitken Spence Hotel Management. Mr. Rishad is an engineer experienced in sustainability, renewable energy, process improvement, CSR, and project management. He obtained his MBA from the University of Moratuwa, specializing in project management, and his bachelor's degree, specialized in electrical engineering, completed under an ambassador scholarship for academic achievement from the Michigan Technological University, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you all to take your seats here. And let me now introduce the moderator of the day, Dr. Sugit Patabandige, Senior Lecturer, University of Kelaniya. Dr. Sugit is a senior lecturer attached to the Department of Marketing Management, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies of University of Kelaniya. He holds a PhD in accountancy from RMIT University, Australia, and a master's degree specializing in economics from the University of Colombo, and a Bachelor of Business Administration special degree specializing in finance from the same university. He is a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Accountants and an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. As an educator, he has won several accolades such as CIMA Tutor of the Year 2009 and CIMA Star 2014 awards. Dr. Sugit is engaged in diverse research topics, including financial liberalization, skills development, management control system, and climate change adaptation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you all to take your seats here.
Good morning. Um, let's get the sound guy to have things under control. All good? Right. Thank you very much, firstly, for the generous introduction place on me. And I'm sure the others would also feel the same. And thank you very much for joining us today here, because I think what we are trying to do is an exercise where industry and academia, where they can come together. How can they positively contribute towards arresting climate change and the risk that climate change entails on not only businesses, not only us as individuals, all of humanity, if you think about it. Let me start firstly by recalling how this topic fits into and what we're actually trying to do here in a bit more detail. Firstly, the overall theme of this conference, and I believe even last year, was a lot to do with sustainability. And we all know sustainability development is about ensuring we have a better world left for our future generations. And when you think about sustainability development, climate change is a major stress on sustainability development. It is a major stress. In that stress, of course, every year people come together, especially our politicians, not only in Sri Lanka, everywhere in the world. These are the COP conferences or climate change conferences, and we are at COP 27. So we have had so many conferences, 27. And next year, of course, this year it was at Egypt. And in fact, it's very fitting because that conference will be concluded today. It started on 6th of this month, and 18th, today is the day that they will conclude. I'm sure they will come up with a lot of documents, right? A lot of scary stories being told, trying to spur this interest towards addressing climate change. But to what extent do we really get scared with all the other things that are happening around us, including the financial recession, not only in Sri Lanka, the looming global financial recession, COVID that we have all endured, and to what extent then climate change figures within that equation is obviously an issue. If you look at the COP27 conference that is getting concluded today, I have an article from Sunday Times newspaper this last Sunday, actually. There were at least 2 full pages dedicated for this. Our president is claiming that he will establish a university. I guess I have better career prospects looking at future when I think about it. And then a new act is supposed to come on board. I actually saw another article that said the climate secretariat is to be established, but we all know it is already there. So maybe establish another one on top of what is there, probably, right? But one thing is very, very clear, that world leaders and larger bodies like the UN are talking about the importance of addressing climate change. One aspect that they have talked good 30, 40 years back is the mitigation part, where we all know that climate change is man-made, or at least that's what the science tells us, the hard science. And how do you try to reduce the level of carbon emissions? How do you increase carbon sink? That's the mitigation part. Sorry. And probably about good 20, 30 years back, they started realizing that even if we try to reduce the carbon emissions, increase the sinks, things are moving towards worst. We better start looking to understand the risk of climate change and adapt to those, right? Now, from that, of course, this particular conference, the 27th conference of the series, they have now moved into losses and damages, right? And the losses and damages part, what they're telling is, even if you adopt, there is a certain amount that you cannot manage. That risk, that damage needs to be compensated by people who created the problem. Now, who created the problem? Of course, we are all contributors probably, but larger contribution by the developing countries. So they're talking about 100 billion US dollar fund to be created. Nothing new for the last 20 odd years they have been talking, but this time central theme seems to be on that line, right? So I would want the participants here, our audience, to understand the whole thought process here is we all have a very big responsibility towards addressing climate change. And I think businesses have a bigger responsibility because they dominate the Earth's landscape, if you think about it. And they have the economic might, they have the economic activities that may or may not contribute to climate change and may or may not probably be able to address climate change. But no one would argue or dispute about the importance of businesses in this climate change addressing scenario. But more than that, we have these four gentlemen and the lady next to me who actually reads and makes sense of climate change and the related risk within organizations. See, when we say organizations, it's not the mortar and bricks, it's the people. And it's the senior managers who will read all these climate change signs. They are the ones who are going to interpret this. They are the ones who are going to assess what climate change means to their business. They are the ones who are going to convince others to come on board. They are the ones who are going to formulate these or incorporate these into their business strategies, models, and implement and monitor. So I guess the senior managers of organizations would have a much bigger role than anyone in terms of addressing climate change, especially businesses who are known to get things done. They are the go-to people for us to talk about climate change. So with that introduction, I also want to highlight the challenge I have as a moderator. We have 5 various senior parties and they are very experienced, and the best is that they are highly qualified. So the language we are talking from an academic standpoint and their language most probably would sync. However, the challenge I face is how do we stop the repetition of what all of us talk about climate change. You ask a question about climate change risk, this. How do you adopt this? So probably, how do we really add value from the standpoint of different parties here? I would firstly like to designate each of you for certain aspects of businesses that I would want you to think when you're answering rather than being general. So with Mohan, of course, with his background, it's pretty obvious, accounting and finance, right? It's okay to go on general line, but would love to see you more focused on that area. And then with Randiva, that will be FMCG because now you're in that, and probably more from the marketing side that I would like to know, because we all know how the biscuit industry is now operating, the challenges that are there. There are bigger challenges with other factors, but this is also a very big challenge. And then with Lilanti, obvious from HRM, when we walked in, you would have seen the yesterday's poster presentation. I think Professor Mohan had a post on HRD and large grand scheme of HR plans. And obviously climate change must be part of that. So I think a good starting point on that we can have from Mrs. Lilanti. And with Sanjeeva, I would want you to focus on products, product development, processes, process development, because that's a key part in terms of addressing climate change issues and circular economy, obviously. And I know Randiva is into circular economy also, so he may also want to pitch in later on. And with Rishad, of course, I'm very much interested in the service industry. We all know that that Sri Lanka, the business landscape is dominated by services, which may also not be that healthy looking at the current economic conditions, but nevertheless, it is dominating. So from a service angle, I would love to get answers from you on the potential lines of questions I'm looking at. So without further ado, let me start with Mohan. And Our panel who was involved in organizing this discussion were very generous in terms of organizing some material for me to go on about, in which Dr. Mudit actually gave me this document where he had summarized some of the latest articles. One of those summary items says, in the latest edition of European CFO survey, close to 1,200 CFOs were asked about their company's measures against climate change. The results reveals a mixed picture with measures mainly focused on short-term cost saving. Nothing surprising, I guess, right? And I also have another report from PwC, which was published this May. Again, obviously with PwC mostly towards accounting, where they are telling that outside the most carbon intensive industries, too few CEOs are looking closely enough at physical and transitional risks that are changing climate possesses, that a change in climate possesses to their companies. So the very first discussion point I would want Andiva to start, for Mohan to start, apologies for the mix-up of names, would be, within your organization, how do you perceive climate change? What type of a risk or what level of risk? And how do you really quantify some of those risks? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to being in this esteemed establishment and being a part of this fantastic panel. Thank you so much again. I'll start from giving a little bit of background. Again, I'm going to bit of generic sort of a discussion. I mean, if you see this pictures or rather the video that we played at the beginning, those are resorts, mostly the John Keel's resorts, and some of them are Maldives. I think we have a bigger footprint in Maldives. Then the questions that we need to ask ourselves is what's going to happen for those? Because at the moment, it's pretty much obvious. I think everybody would agree we are in a contraction, economy in the contraction. Then the things are in outside, the assets which are in outside, bringing the cash to the company as well as the to the country. I mean, the Maldives is one of that. Then the question is, when this climate change, I think I'm not going to get into the details of rather science of this climate change and emissions and perseverance and flood and so on and so forth. Then the question or rather initial indicators would come, finance point of view, to the bottom line. I mean, that's a starting point. Then you will see there's a contraction in the bottom line. There's a, when we actually want to push some of the things in terms of the revenue to the reducing the cost of the sales and things like that, there's a contraction or other the drop in the bottom line. Then other indicator, it's a mix of both. You can see there are investment flowing. Mostly, we people would look at investment in green assets because you want to go for the green assets, this thing. But the catch is when you get that rate of return, you have to have the rate of return. Then there's a question of rate of return because some of the technology is used in these assets pretty much high. I mean, at least for this part of the world, these are costly. I think there's a question of how we get that green assets to the affordable cost. That's something that we have to be mindful. I think those are another indicator. Then there's another indicator that now usually I think we looked at 1 year time horizon. You prepare something called the annual plan, 5-year annual plan, reforecast, best estimate, you call it. I think these are the nuances happening. Now, if I'm wearing that group financial controller's hats, I need to ask several times, I mean, what are going to do with these assets? Is this asset going to impair pretty soon? Because the moment if government puts some regulation, I think lucky enough that there are some regulation very lenient in this thing, but that's again a barrier. For example, the moment that we have a very linear type of regulations, then people are not pursuing these green assets and green bonds and whatever you call, then you are pretty much recycling your same assets over and over again. I think we have to be very careful when it comes to this rules and regulations. Then I'm coming back to this, the best estimate, reforecast, annual plans, and so on and so forth. You have to think what kind of a regulation overview is going to happen. What are the regulations going to change? Then accordingly, you need to change your investments flows, because you can't actually invest on the same assets over and over again. If there's some regulation change, that you need to impair that the assets you already deployed, then you need to actually bring another assets to compensate that. It's done something that you need to think twice, thrice, I don't know, maybe several times when you think of this best estimate annual plan, because then that is going beyond 12 months. I think its report says that you are looking short term, but end of the day, you won't be able to look at the short term. It has to be beyond that. We don't have a crystal ball now. I don't mind telling you now, we are in a situation, we try to survive. Forget about the investment, we try to survive. Even all the businesses in the country, they are in the mode of surviving. Then when we people think of investing, the thing is you need to have something called, again, we are in the finance act, as you said, you need to preserve the cash. Forget about the big sort of investment. You need to preserve the cash to make that liquidity position is there. You need to pay salaries. There are so many things that you need to do, run the organization. I think maybe deviating or maybe actually going here and there, but by and large, starting from PBT, I think that's the first indicator you would see from this economic, because it's from John Keel's point of view, we have 7 sectors, 80 plus companies. Then starting from leisure to what you call the Keel's outlet, because if there's a drought, then there's no any produce in our Keel's outlet for people to buy. Likewise, there'll be like a whole repercussion. I maybe won't be able to confine into a sector or a company, but the thing is, this is happening to all the stakeholders around. It's a common across. Then this will fall into a contraction or rather drop in profitability. Then the question of impairment in assets or change in the current assets, composition of the current assets. Then again, the investment decision, pretty tough. If you want to do investment, you need to think, I don't know, it may be so many thought process have to be there for you to get into a new investment because of the technology and so on and so forth. I think very high level, these are the pretty much indicators that I would see from the finance and accounting point of view.
Thank you. I think you touched on a point I was thinking of later on bringing forward. That's this investor demand that drives climate action. And World Economic Forum, top of this year that happened, identifies that one of the most powerful factors shaping the shift towards sustainability is investor pressure. Gartner research finds that 85% of investors considered ESG factors in their investment in 2020, while 91% of banks monitor ESG performance of investors. Of course, from a global standpoint, this looks to be the case. How do you at group level find with Sri Lanka attracting financiers, and whether the kind of investors that we are having are into this, or it's a global phenomenon, not really a developing country phenomenon?
That'd be a very good question. I can start from, if you look at John Keel's holdings, the shareholding structure, mainly institutional shareholders. You can't find like a owner manager, so to say, like it's a pretty much dominated by institutional shareholders. I don't know whether you heard that recently we signed an agreement or other, there's a debenture issued to exactly ADB. Then we have Fairfax, then we have IFC. They are pretty much into it. It's not only the ESG, women empowerment. Can I touch that? How the woman empowerment actually trying to the climate? Think about it this way. Who are the most vulnerable community when it comes to this, what call serious drought, serious floods? Exactly, women and children. If you set aside the children, because anyway, they're anyway vulnerable. If there's a war or something like that, they are anyway vulnerable. Why that woman in that category? Because they are being, how do I say, they are being the custodian of the livestock. They are being the custodian of the children. end of the day, they are the people actually bringing the food. Imagine the situation, very simple example. If there's a drought, that particular lady in this house have to work for about 1 kilometer. Because of this climate drought and all this repercussion, she has to work 5 kilometers. Imagine the risks that she's taking, walking out from the house. There are snakes to that. I think if you look at it, I think COPE, they touch this particular point. There's a particular session on that, how that, especially the woman, this thing. I think these are the things we have to be careful. Then coming back to your question, when we are dealing with these institutional shareholders and debentures and fund agencies, these are not something foreign for us. Actually, we have to work. I think maybe I'm going back to that ESG Youth Summit that yesterday happened. Anusha was there as our Chief Sustainability Officer. I think she may touch this particular point. They are in a journey of we already have a developed architecture in terms of the sustainability. Now we are going ahead in terms of bringing these ESG factors. I mean, how we're going to actually demarcate our territory, as well as putting a framework for us to capture these ESG initiatives and put it to a place where everybody in understanding. I think we need to get, anyway, the blessing from the management is already there. Then it's a question of how we're going to articulate to the tasks, objectives, and get this thing done at the outset. I think very high level, sorry, I took a little while, took a time. I mean, that's the overall understanding with this economy, what you call investor need or other understanding, and the linking of, there are other things that how this link it to that's what you call the theme here, the climate to the environment, how this other small bit of pieces are linked there. Sorry, I took a
No, that's okay. I think just to sum up the problem of whether we can actually isolate climate change and talk, or whether everything that is to do with sustainability gets really connected is a big issue. I think maybe the climate change division we are making is quite artificial out of your statements. I think that's what we kind of absorb, where the women issues to social issues to all that is connected. One last question from you before I move to the other panelists. I understand the bigger picture. I understand the challenges people are facing, but you must have a bigger challenge in deciding what to take into your decision making when you wear your finance hat. How do you make that decision? What to take, what not to take regarding climate change?
It's pretty tough. I think I start from my statement. We are in a contraction economy. I think we are in a survival mode. I think then the question is how far we can go ahead with very simple example. Now it's already in the public domain. We stop bringing new keels outlets because it's not the current environment. You can't actually bring this new keels outlet. I mean, maybe again, it's linked to the sustainability. Now the model of keels outlet is, we actually extract the renewable energy. I mean, the roof that you are seeing, it's actually totally what called solar, because that's the model that we may run. The question is, can you afford to that? What's the return that you are getting? This now, because of the economic contraction, everybody knows that footfall, it's falling. The basket value falling. I think the people are more focused on the things that rise to the dal and things like that, not the, you get it. Then the question is how we look at that in a environment, in a such an environment for investment decision. But nevertheless, we are making, I mean, if you look at our bigger project, the waterfront, it's moving on. I think we are getting it through. Then those kind of things that there's something called, what are the committed investments, committed cost and committed one. Anyway, we have to get this thing done because otherwise it's a waste of money, no point. Then the other question is in terms of the new decision making, it's pretty tough. It's actually not limited to my level. It goes to the board level, even for a value that we look at. Sometimes those value earlier, it may stop at my level. Now it's actually stop at chairman's level and deputy chairman's level, because that's the rigorousness that everybody facing. I think it's a common for every people sit here in this forum.
And I think thank you very much for being very honest, because the circumstances have pushed down the priority of climate change and responses to climate change is what the bottom line is. And I guess everyone would understand that. But then we will come later on into within that restrictions, even what can we really do? But later on. Let me move to our next panelist, Richard. Now, I am mainly focusing from your side regarding the service sector. I have found quite a lot of organizations who kind of talk about the carbon footprint and their positive contribution towards carbon neutralizing, even some claiming they are zero carbon. In fact, I have seen certain hotels where their taxis carry this banner telling zero carbon, but it's a petrol vehicle. So from a service standpoint, how do you identify climate-related risk in your industry, particularly in the hotel sector? Because we need dollars, we need hotels, but we also need to make sure we attract the right clientele if we really want to be sustainable. So in that, I think climate change and addressing climate change becomes a bigger issue. So how do you see climate change related risk affecting you, and what type of risk you feel needs to be addressed in order to attract people also?
Very interesting point when you turn about the service sector. In the hospitality industry where I represent, I must say we sell a story. It's everything about a story. It's not just the infrastructure that we have, all that has been set up. It's about the people, the smile, and the story that we tell the guests that come along. And everybody likes a guilt-free, happy story. They want an experience. They want something to take back with them that they can relate to as storytellers as well. So when you're talking about the service industry specifically, it's the experience that we are selling. If it's a pleasant experience, then that's the value addition that we can get. But if it's not, if there's no pleasant story to be said, then it works negatively. Nobody's going to promote a location or a place or an establishment if that service level and the story is not pleasant. So that is one of the a part of the risk that we face. We are selling the sun, the beach, the cultural heritage, the greenery that we have in Sri Lanka, for example, the corals, the deep sea diving, the swimming with the various dolphins and so on in the Maldives, and so that experience with nature. And nature is the prime area where climate change, global warming and so on is experienced by the guest. When you don't have a pleasant experience, a pleasant story being said, then the value addition is lost. So that's the biggest risk that we have. We feel it. I'm trying to limit myself to the service sector. That quite drastically. When you have people encroaching for economic reasons, when there's drought, as we talked about, there's crop yields that are going down, then you can't provide for your families. They tend to move away from the service sector as well. Basically, everybody's basic needs are not being met because of climate change. When it comes to our infrastructure, our hotels and our locations that we are placed in, if you have sea erosion because of climate change, when I first started a few years ago, my predecessors would be telling us it's very predictable. You can predict the weather. You can say this is the best time to travel to a certain location. And of course, we would increase our rates for our properties during that time. But now it's completely out the window. You can't financially plan rates simply because of the weather that is there. I know scientists predict many models, many predictions, but we talked about a crystal ball. It's not there. It's a very short-term adaptation that we are looking at as opposed to long-term planning. And that makes it very difficult because you don't have a vision, something to aim towards, something to go towards, something to work towards. And when you don't see that light at the end of the tunnel, it becomes very difficult for giving people hope as well. When the people don't have the hope, then their service levels drop, obviously. They don't have the motivation. They don't have the will to keep going and that affects. And it's a slow, gradual depreciation of it. Is a slow deterioration of that motivation. I hate to be the one of with the doom and gloom. We always want to be positive. We want to talk about positive things and then bring it up. But it's very bleak. Projections are extremely bleak. We don't see in the short term where this is going to end, and we need to throw large amounts of money into it, large sums of. Uh, I hate to be the person who says throwing money at a problem, but we need serious funding in this. It's difficult when it's organizations, I must say.
Can I interject you there? Where do you think this money will come from?
Very interesting point. At our level, when you propose certain plans, when you look at all the feasibility studies that you do when it comes to a project or a good investment in our eyes, in the environmentalist eyes or the sustainability professional's eyes, you present to management, and the simplest question shuts it down. Will a guest pay $5 extra for this service? I'm sure I don't have, it's an elephant in the room that we have to answer. Will you pay $5? Okay, we're talking about dollars. Will you pay 1,000 rupees extra for a room night that is carbon neutral? Or would you go for the cheaper option because certification costs, all this costs money? Will you pay extra for that service? Will you pay extra for that green certification? It's a really tough call.
In terms of keeping aside that difficulty, although it is the elephant and we all know, and I think we can talk about that, but none of us probably would have the crystal ball to answer. Within what you can do, within your industry being focused on services, what kind of actions you may be looking at in a more micro level? Because I kind of feel that anything larger is going to end up in rupees and cents. But we must be able to do certain action that address climate change within our kitty. So what kind of actions under the radar, probably, let's put it like that?
It's not actually under the radar. It's public knowledge. We are a publicly listed company, and any question that is thrown toward us, we are obliged to answer. So we know for the past 3 years, we've gone through a pretty tough period. In Sri Lanka specifically, I'm really into that. From Easter attacks, climate, the COVID pandemic situation, now the economic crisis, we are finding it difficult to fill our rooms, the hotel rooms, with guests. People are traveling less, people are spending less, people are experiencing less. So what happens to the 2,000 plus staff that we have on board? We can't let them go. They also have families to provide for. So we embarked on a more volunteerism aspect. Apart from their day-to-day workforce, they get involved with mitigation within their community and their particular place of work. So whether it be tree planting, I know it sounds very cynical. You get a guest who comes from 2,000, 3,000 miles away, comes and stays with a huge carbon footprint, but you get them to plant a tree and they make them, am I guilt free? Yes, it is cynical, but that's the part of the story. At least they are conscious about it. There are many climate deniers out there that don't even think about that. It's two aspects of the story. So getting back to the story about our employees, involvement in simple things like planting trees, planting vegetables, planting whatever crops that they can within the space that is available, giving them the know-how and the knowledge to do that. We spent the past 2.5 years doing that. In the Maldives, of course, planting coral. For us, it's a great effort, but with very, very little to show for it. Because many of you might know, coral grows at micro levels, and you don't see that the effort of it. And climate change, a simple half a degree, a minute degree change in the temperature kills years of work. So yes, our employees feel it and they feel very sad about it. And that is the story that we are trying to impart to the guests that do arrive.
This climate change denial parties, of course, there are people always, but I think that is now turning to the other way a lot. Do you also see that with your employees? Do you have to put some effort in terms of selling the message?
The effort was put in actually over many years. As you said, now the deniers are becoming the minority. Earlier, it was just a very few handful of people who was shouting about it, lecturing about it, talking about it, and then they become the laughing stock sometimes. But then it's a very difficult position to be in to say, I told you so, especially when it affects everybody. It's difficult to say, I told you so, when it has already affected you and the people around you. So yes, it becomes easier now. And the effects of it is quite self-evident, actually.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. And moving forward to Randiva, from a more of FMCG line, I'm again looking at that World Economic Forum and some of the data that came out. It talks about how consumer demand plays a major part in how organizations tend to respond to climate change. It says, with an increasing number of millennials and Gen Z consumers, demand for sustainable products is increasing. 73% of Gen Z consumers say they are willing to spend more on sustainable products. A Deloitte study shows that around 60% of consumers in the UK reduce their usage of single-use plastic to adopt a more sustainable lifestyle. Considering the kind of business you are using and single-use plastic is part and parcel of your packaging, do you really see such a trend in Sri Lanka? Or is it something that you hear around the world, but no, we are not really, because again, it boils down to rupees and cents.
Thank you very much for that question, Sujit. To tell you very frankly, in local market, Sri Lankan market, we don't see that kind of a push. But again, as a manufacturer, it's not an excuse. So sometimes what we see that, okay, it's not been asked, we take it as excuse that we can continue like this. So, I mean, we all talk about it. Current situation is completely different. We are in a completely different situation. I mean, we have seen the world in 2008, declaring such a, I mean, people predict that it could be completely different what we saw in 2008. So these all green technology, green product, carbon neutral product, interest came seriously down. But that's not a general situation. So we all need to, I think, come out of that current situation and think a little beyond, because we all expect things will be better, right? So that's the life we would like to see it down the line. So in that way, a company like us, if with your permission, I would like to touch a little bit on the production point of view as well. So a couple of things like what we're working on, we start monitoring on packaging, like weight per product. So how can we reduce it? So these are, I mean, of course, there's a cost consequences as well. So these are the things as a manufacturer we have been doing, even though we don't see that kind of pressure locally. But same time, we are export as well. We see these demands are being put on for different markets. Because generally speaking, whether it's our confectionery products or any organic products, we have a different market because we can't compete with some price sensitive markets. So if you go for a different level of markets, those different level market has a different demand. So we see internationally, you have certain elements, whether it's a packaging or whether it's a process, what kind of a supply chain you have. So we have to continuously evolve ourselves. And as well as during this COVID, and now we are facing dollar crisis as demanded for us. Most of our packaging comes from elsewhere. We don't produce, and it's cost increase. Because end of the day, it's economics. The motivation is one thing, and in economics. So I see it's a positive environment because, I mean, personally speaking, as a company, we did many things how we can reduce our packaging. And with your permission, I would like to touch one thing from science point of view. So plastic is not a bad material because we don't talk about the science there. So people only talk about one element. If you want to talk about the better or a negative, you need to look at the life cycle of the product. People think plastic is bad against the glass. Completely different scientific point of view. If you look at, I'm not going to promote plastic against glass, but I'm only talking about the science behind it. Plastic is the most fabulous material that world has ever seen. It's most stable material. Only thing, if you don't know how to use it and how to use it back and how to manage it. So problem is not with the material. It's all about the solutions we have. So while we educating ourselves, our consumers on the right thing, as a producer, we have equal responsibility to use the adequate amount of packaging, so without using over. So that's what we feel like. Of course, yes, there's no pressure with current situation. You might have seen that some of the price increase, we get a huge pressure. I think what we saw is like people need to go back to the basics sometimes. Sometimes people not have a affordability in current situation to buy even one product. So they have to go back to some of the basics. That's the environment. But it's not excuse. As a company, we don't see it as excuse. We can do something different. So that's what we are working on.
Thank you. About the plastic point of view, I think interesting observation. I'm sure different people will have different takes on the whole thing, especially from a soft science mentality. But the packaging that you have and having the right amount of packaging to right biodegradable amount of packaging, I think is an important aspect. Do you think if you move into the right type of packaging with the least amount of footprint, Sri Lankan clients would be sophisticated enough to take up such products, especially price-wise to demand-wise?
I would say not only Sri Lanka, even globally, it's not possible to move immediately. So if you look at normal packing material in biodegradable, so it's about 4 times expensive than the traditional material. So we don't see that kind of a shift even globally, even though we talked about it. But it's important to talk today if you want to see impact in another 10 years time. So the gentleman was talking on some of the solar panels, so cost was about 10 years ago. It was how much of more expensive, but it will be affordable in one point of time because we are putting effort continuously. But as of today, I will not generalize saying that Sri Lanka does not have a market. Even global context, there's no market for that. That's still niche. But we need to move towards that step by step. I mean, as an example, manufacturers like us, we are monitoring our footprint, carbon footprint. So there are certain things we can do within ourselves if you be conscious. I mean, look at we as individual. If you really want to make sure you want to be carbon less impact to the environment, there are many things we can do. You don't need to switch your whole car straight away to a electric car and our electricity being made out of gasoline. So sometimes there's no logic behind it, but conscious mind with the proper evaluation, there are steps you can do. It's a journey. So sometimes we look at this as a destination. Okay, tomorrow will be carbon neutral. Tomorrow let's be carbon positive. No, it's not going to work in that way. It's a journey. So that's why the companies like us, we're taking that journey, and always there's something we could do differently than today. Especially the COVID helped us to learn a lot of things, like our meetings came online. So these are all helped in the right way.
The important word of journey that you mentioned, in that, do you actually do like a product life cycle analysis and try to, we know there are standards even for that kind of analysis. Do you actually actively undertake those things, or it's just something you aspire to do?
To tell you very frankly, we have done a couple of, but we don't do enough. But as a company, that's the direction we are looking at. Because when you hear about CBL, you mostly remember the biscuits or chocolates. But we are a company, we are sourcing more than 12,000 farmers locally for summer portion products into sesame or soya products. So same sector that I'm representing into coconut or organic products. This part is not much familiar, been seen by public in general. So one of the things we have done is we are continuously working on the supply chain to be local, because I mean, we are impacted by COVID as well. I'm saying that none of the things happened. Okay, let's be environmental. You know, it didn't happen that way. So we also worked on the economics. It has to be more sustainable. So business sustainability came into the picture. So, I mean, example, company that I'm driving in, we have 100%, 85% value addition from locally and export. So we only import very minor packing material. So that's the direction we are day-to-day working on. We are trying to replace some of our manufacturing recipes or products to be more sustainable.
In that, wouldn't you be more exposed to the climate change risk because Sri Lanka is considered as one of the top 5 most vulnerable countries for climate change and climate risk? And 12,000 farmers and possible impact on their farming, and then that would impact you directly. So is there anything particular you are now working with those farmers also in terms of educating them about climate risk? How do they manage better climate smart cropping, stuff like that? Or it's still in a kind of work in progress situation?
No, there's something we're aggressively working on. Fully agree. What you said is completely correct. The problem in Sri Lanka, we have climate issues because of we are very resilient to the climate. We are very open for climate impacts, but same we have issue of land usage. Example, if you look at coconut, we only have a coconut trees, but there are plenty of lands inside you can grow other crops. That's what we are doing. And then the other one is water management. So we're aggressively working on the farmers to have the right water management. These are like we do already. I mean, we all know that the issue that what we faced is more than the climate, it's a man-made crisis like fertilizer ban. So we have those challenges on top of it, like policy point of view. But we still have opportunity as a country because we have a nice environment to grow. Because these climate changes they are in everywhere. If you look at today, Indonesia, Philippines, for coconut sector has the same impact. So we are not the only space, the only people whose impact on this environment.
You mentioned that about water management and all that you kind of work with the farmers. Do you kind of have your own field officers, or are there people who you engage and work with? Because I think that would be important, because there should be a support structure that you can get connected and engage with. Is that what's happening, or this is an independent game that is going on?
No, it's actually the hybrid model. We have our own team as well as we are working with the resource person in generally, whether it's into coconut sector or a pineapple, all these sectors, we are working with the industry experts as well. I mean, we are a small portion of the games. We'll not be able to do everything on our own. So it's because one of the other things we are trying to do is like example, again, I'm taking my example, coconut sector. So we are about 30% of the business. They're about 70% out there. So we are now working as an industry. That's something we are lacking with sometimes. We have seen some of the industry like garment sector start working as industry and able to bring down a lot of changes. Like all the industries, because we are very small as a company. If you go out only, you feel like, if you go to other countries only, you feel like how small we are. No, I mean, when we inside, we think, okay, my goodness, we are a big company. We have this much of revenue, this much of people work, but it's a very tiny and global context. So our industries need to work on. That's something we have been doing, not only as a company, but as an industry, whether it's a coconut, whether into certain sectors, trying to change that as industry.
Just to interrupt the industry, this linkage is also important. I believe there are industry bodies also now affiliated to Chamber and all that coming together, especially driven by Dilma and all that. Do you in your sector also see that kind of industry coming together, or is it still discussion stage kind of?
All the sectors, we don't see the same thing, but I think it's all end up at you as well. So how much you willing to contribute to the industry? So we can complain that others are not contributing, but do you need to ask that question whether we're contributing? So as a company, we are looking at what we can play in that industry. So we see very proactively, we are working on coconut sector, we are working on this corn sector, we have issue all these corn. So, but as a company, we see that positive trend. It's not completely negative in general.
So lot to desire, but slowly moving with the current situations. Looking at the next panelist, Sanjeev, I was looking at this report by McKinsey's that had identified sustainability reduces cost and can affect operating profit by up to 60%. And another report by Deloitte says companies with an inclusive culture have a 27% higher profitability and a 22% greater productivity. I think all of us, in terms of our behavior, we have to look at and see what we can do. And we can see it is going to be profitable at least. So it'll add sense or make sense with rupees and cents also. In your role and as for what you're day-to-day engaged with, how do you see processes being improved? What kind of exact things can be done? Where do we really start? Because even to start where you may be overwhelmed, but looking to respond, to climatic changes? Maybe even starting from what type of risk do you see to processes from climate change from your experience? And how do you look to then address and probably redesign the processes?
Thank you very much for inviting, as well as it's a privilege for me to talk, being a student of the university. Good question, Doctor. Let me also, like, I'm from cement industry, as well as my business that I drive is the waste management business. If you, maybe for an audience, like cement industry is blamed for GHG emission because we heat up limestone or hunugal, you get CO2. Right? It's given almost. So it's given in our industry in the world. Like if you really look at the world statistics, cement is the second largest consumed item in the world, next to water in terms of volume. So cement industry itself has a lot of environmental impact. So that cement industry is moving now. They have to embed it to their business DNA, this sustainability, which ultimately link to your environmental or circular economy or whatever you call it. In terms of our processes and product, like product innovation has become nowadays in cement industry so very popular, because if you are not going to innovate your product, will not be able to manage your company, right? I'm not going to go, we are a regional company. Previously, I worked for a global cement company, now a regional company, and we looked at the opportunities. We understood it at our board level, and we are a listed company in Thai Stock Exchange. And we have to be in this sustainability to mitigate climate risk, no option. Okay, we've looked at our processes in a way, how to, of course, adopt, or rather maybe mitigate. Look at in cement is like we use a lot of energy and then heat it up and we get a lot of emission. And then not only that, the product is cement. What happened to cement next? Right? Okay, coming back to your processes, maybe I'm not going to teach you the cement, but cement is usually a largest thermal intensive, the material intensive, it has a big value chain, a lot of machineries, etc. So we've looked at in our product, how much of energy that we can get from waste. That's where I represent. So you won't believe in Sri Lankan context, 40% of our energy is from waste in Sri Lanka. So we save 40% of coal, which can be used in future for someone else, maybe 2000, maybe 100 years ago. So cement industries, everyone is now moving alternative world as well as raw material, and also a lot of regenerative energy like solar. We've installed 10 megawatt or a 15 megawatt solar in our Cambodian plant. So, and again, the product, of course, we are pushing in Sri Lanka to change the standard in a way that to incorporate other ways, we call it mineral component, to our product as a blended product. In those days, we just grind clinker with minor additives and we just sell. But now, someone else product has, waste has become a raw material product. As an example, maybe Norochole power plant produces the fly ash, bottom ash. We have incorporated into all those product, or rather waste, into our product portfolio. Innovated, we have built Kalani Bridge, the Nelum Kuluna, and all because it's a special product. We have innovated, and we have put our innovation center for academias as a collaborative space. There is much to be done in Sri Lankan context in terms of cement. And also final product, like what happened to, we also have a lab, Randiva spoke about like FMCG, packaging industry. What we are thinking, what's our waste in our product? We call it CDW, construction and demolition and excavation waste. Anything has a life cycle. What happened to this concrete? So we have a liability to taking that back into our process. Like if you talk about, like we talk about calcium carbonate, hunugal heated up with a complex clinker, and you mix cement or concrete. in science, if you put concrete with carbon dioxide, technically you should be able to get limestone back. It's happening, right? It could be a good carbon sink. So cement industry is now moving completely a sort of circular economic thinking. Otherwise, they cannot be uncompetitive. So, and also industry 4.0 aspect have seriously come into place in any cement industries. And the largest cement industries are now closing down old facilities to bring up with newest technology. So to answer your questions, things are quickly changing, adopting, because we have to bring that into business DNA. Otherwise, there is no survival for cement industries.
The way you are articulating things looks like there are a lot of investment that goes in the ways to go back, processes to change, investments. But from our previous panelists, we know finding capital is not going to be that easy. So how are you and your industry managing in terms of such capital investments and capital intensive investments?
Good question. Like, it's difficult to answer as well. Like, in end of the day, what matters most is how much value you bring to your shareholders. And of course, Randev spoke about, gentleman spoke about sustainability. What happened, maybe my personal comment as well, most of the Sri Lankan industries, in your P&L, your P or a profit, so you have not considered your environmental cost. So there is a bit of conflict, like if I'm fully compliant for environment, but I have to compete in this, maybe someone is not clearly doing environmental in the same market. So that's where you spoke about Gen Z, the sustainability aspect. I'm not buying non-sustainable product, etc. Coming back to your point, of course, it's really challenging if I am bringing a project without having maybe 10 years payback, that will not work, right? So, but again, as a company, we looked at, you also spoke about, maybe he spoke about, there are many financial instrument tools where we can, touch upon to bring it up. Maybe Randev previously told him, we had a first green loan. Can you remember, like, to bring up our solar drying facility? Like, there are available financial support also available. I heard that maybe she can touch. So there are funds available, but we don't know how to get it. Like plastic, we don't know how to use it. So maybe where we can work together with an academia, maybe an expert like you, how to access this fund. So of course, it's challenging to bring I cannot go tomorrow to board like having 10 years payback any project. But if you bring up sustainability part of it, like we invested on our solar drying facilities. We have a biggest solar drying facility in the country. We have 2. That is purely to treat all BOI industries, to treat their industrial sludges. So we use solar because Putlam is having so much of solar. We looked at that aspect, bring it. I don't use another energy source to heat it up because I want to get all water out before it goes to kiln. So if you really look at it, Randev spoke about an LCA, life cycle aspect of any process, any product. I think you can really see the enablers. You can really see what positives you can bring it up.
You spoke about sludge and recycling and all that, and Putlam being great. We also know there are certain social resistance towards some of those activities. Do you often encounter those?
Maybe I'll take, since my subject, I'll take little time. Of course, in Sri Lankan context, I have seen people with regard to waste management. You won't believe how many dump sites in this beautiful country. Just see. There are about 300 plus small to large scale dump sites. We are the nation. In our capital city in 2016-17, one dump site collapsed, 35 officially people died. A dump site. Thanks to all linear economy. So what linear method you take, make, consume, and you just dispose, and you're putting a lot of mountain here, beautiful land, a lot of stuff. So with regard to waste management in Sri Lanka, I think everyone blames everyone. That's our experience. Maybe Randy, you can endorse it because he's also in this field. But no one is really look at an sustainable way of doing waste management. Of course, INSEE, or a legacy company, we have started it for last 2 decades in the country. It's not boasting, but without INSEE today, you can't run all BOI zone today. And you can't run maybe large multinational, because we are the only party. So that's where your point, now Aitken Spence has invested on waste to energy. But if they really look or listen to their pain points, it's a billions of investment. So in Sri Lankan context, like waste management waste is an unsolved issue in the country. And you don't have, maybe you can see the polythene, the FMCG part, etc., but you don't know really a chronic impact of waste. It's huge. Just look at the numbers which we are reporting at NC. I don't say waste has direct link, but number of cancer patients, number of patients. There are a lot of consequences which has impacted to waste. Of course, we have different challenges, but we as a company, we follow all the world standard. Our facilities are well equipped. To tell you, our Katunayaka facility, maybe at your time, 40% of our project cost, but by that time it's a 600 million worth in 2008 worth project. I think close to 40% goes to our geomembrane, which we have put for precautions of future degradation of soil, etc. So it works, but you have to put in a different, right perspective.
To take you a bit detail into the projects of that nature, we all know that at the end of the day, there are all sort of investment appraisal techniques, but people are really concerned about payback. And you use the term payback a couple of times. The successful projects that you're talking, if it is not that confidential, what type of payback periods are we talking?
It depends. Like, we are a large multinational, we are a local multinational company. We are looking a long-term business, as well as I started, like, we are a cement industry perceived, or we are emitting CO2. We want to mitigate. Of course, we are bringing that aspect that well. We are not really looking merely at that project itself. So since we are a big, large company, we have that, like, because we have already defined our SD ambitions: climate change, energy, circular economy, and biodiversity. So we have that aspect in that as well.
But in a way that may also contradict to the point that how do you convince the top level, because they'll still talk numbers, time periods, and all that, and then that bigger connecting. So I'm just trying to understand.
Sure, it's like this. Like, of course, in our project we have many aspects, like social aspects, environmental aspects, plus of course the business aspect. So we have some projects we invest where we are not looking real payback.
Thank you. Moving on to Lilanti. I was intrigued by our panel. We have a member from our HR department also. So he also did some work and sent me a document. And it carried the caption Green HRM. Of course, greening and greenwashing are famous concepts that we talk about. But green HRM is quite new to me. I have not really heard about it. Probably when HRM is evolving a lot. So green HRM. Would love to know, what are we talking here when we say green HRM?
Thank you, Sugit, and thanks to the University of Kelaniya for giving me this opportunity. Before I answer your question directly, let me ask the audience, anyone from the human resource faculty or anything, do you teach green HRM curriculum at the university? You do? You would like to elaborate or say something for the benefit of the audience?
That's a very nice way to
Just-
go about, isn't it?
Yes, yes. No, it's actually good to know that you all have started teaching. the students, the future generation of the country on these concepts. Why I ask that question is, as academia, as human resource professionals, we have let down the future generation in a big way. When we started the before humans evolved to where we are now, we had those things in us, right? We all the religions that shaped our value system, the way of thinking, everybody talks about living in harmony with nature. Nature is God's creation, should be treated with a divinity. That's the concept that we all started our journey. And where we are now, we have forgotten our principles. We have forgotten our responsibilities. Let me ask another question, interesting one, because there's audience from other companies. How many of you could predict that there was a financial recession or financial catastrophe like this coming into Sri Lanka? Most of us knew, right? What did we do about it? Did we question the authorities? Did we give suggestions? Did we do anything to act? No. What is the consequence now? All of us are facing the impact of it. Why? We have silently been passive listeners and passively say same thing with climate change. We are unable to see the full impact of it. In my personal opinion, if we don't do anything to mitigate it right now or take any proper corrective action, I use the terminology proper because I'll explain that also again. If we don't do the right thing at the right time, this can be the most crucial, I think humanity can be even driven out of the earth because climate change can impact the whole ecosystems, the way we operate, everything. None of us can operate individually, right? Through the pandemic, we learned that we can't live in isolation, right? That spread across the world and nobody could do anything to prevent it or safeguard their own communities or countries. So global warming is similar. The impact can be anywhere. As Dr. Sugit mentioned, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and all those countries closer to us are even more vulnerable. So we need to take action right now because we are going to, like the financial crisis that we are currently in, we are going to face the music more than the others, right?
Yeah.
So coming back to your question, yes, we do green HR. What is green HR is mostly we are trying to develop human capability to understand what this is all about and what sort of preventive or corrective action that you can do, and in your own roles, how you can contribute to the society in a more sustainable and economically friendly way. So that's the basic concept. The concepts and the theories are still evolving because it's a new concept to all. When it comes to HR, still we are trying to move out from personal management to human resource management in this country. And this is another step, but we will have to evolve fast and adapt to those things. In terms of the bank, what we do right now, we try to develop the capacity of our lending officers, from credit officers to relationship managers. Recently, as the keynote speaker mentioned, sustainable financing direction came from the central bank, and we are to fund certain industries. So to do that in a better way, which will be like a winning platform for both sides, the customer as well as the bank and the environment. We need to educate our staff members to evaluate projects properly, take that lending decision, assess the risk of each project that they are funding, and see the capacity. So that's the learning and the HRM, if I may answer your question.
Excellent. Thank you. It's very clear and seems like even the JDs are getting changed. So the green aspects are connected. But you also mentioned about the central bank directives. Have they also given you certain guidelines for you to incorporate, or this is just a free for all kind of a scenario?
It's a detailed guideline. In fact, I have it in my hand. let me read some of it. They have been very specific. If I may take the time to read, or maybe, yes. This is Banking Act Direction 5 of 2022, Sustainable Finance Activities of Licensed Banks. I'll just read the preamble. You can research and learn about it more. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka, having considered the importance of coming to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations and the need to transit towards a green, inclusive, and balanced economy in Sri Lanka, published the Roadmap for Sustainable Finance in Sri Lanka in 2019. The roadmap provides a broader direction to financial regulations and financial institutions to effectively manage environmental, social, and governance risk associated with projects they finance and promote assistance to businesses that are greener, climate friendly, and socially inclusive. And then certain industries are also mentioned in the directive. That is agriculture, forestry, and logging. Sustainable agriculture is one of the key things that they want to focus. Energy saving machinery and equipment, renewable energy projects, and the list goes on. So they have identified the projects where financing is required. And like my fellow panelists mentioned, the lending organizations, ADB, IFC, to all the lending companies also insist and allocate certain amount of monies to these to promote green economic development in the country. So we can make use of it. Where we have seen gaps are people are unable to give a proper proposal to the bank. That is the capability that we need to develop in our customers, because if they are able to put the proposal properly, we will be able to finance the project. Thank you.
Right. I think a related issue is finance being really costly, not only for environmental sensitive projects or any project for that matter. Finance is really costly. And interesting to see that central bank had designated certain focus areas. But are those areas targeted with the concessional rate, or it's still the normal rates that are there?
They have not mentioned the rates, but depending on the funding that we have and the organizations now they have given a free hand for the organizations to come up with their own products. So when the market competes, we will have a better product range available for our consumers. Currently, if I take the solar project that we fund, the banking industry funds are at a very concessionary interest rate, but still we find reluctance in people taking that opportunity to take that loan and invest in solar energy.
Yeah, I think an important point, and probably addressing the naysayers towards these foreign institutions and their involvement. A lot of the solar power projects were funded by a ADB subsidized loan scheme. I think the last 10-15 years, they have been very active in that space. So maybe it's not just this foreign interference and sovereignty issues as such, but there are a lot of positive angles. But not to see any concession rates, and it's just put out to what extent people will get motivated, I guess the time would tell us. So one other thing I want to talk about, using those same reports, industry reports about climate change and why organizations should actually address climate change. Connected to HR, it says attracting talent. It says being a sustainable business, sorry, is important to attract talent. Deloitte survey finds 49% of Gen Z and 44% of millennials said that they had made career choices based on their personal ethics. And then a recent survey shows 51% of US business students would take a lower pay if the company is environmentally responsible. I mean, these are new stories. 51% willing to go for a lower salary if the company is environmentally sensitive and responsible. Do you really see in your role as HR and running the HR mechanisms of organizations such kind of mentality with Sri Lankan talent?
Not many, But if you are coming from affluent backgrounds and if they're exposed to the foreign markets or foreign education, then they have this sort of requirements. Others simply, I'm sad to say that most of them are trying to find a job for survival. So in that job market, our own grown talent don't have much demands, if I may use that term. But if you're coming from a certain level of background, yes, they like to work in organization where their values and the organization values are matching. And as you said, the Gen Ys and Z are more, I think they are more they love to be in harmony with the nature. And they feel that they are responsible, and unless they do something to give back to society and the environment, that they will face bigger challenges going forward. So it's their future, right? They have to live. If the life expectancy is 90 years, by the time they leave, they can't be using oxygen masks. So they feel that they need to invest for their own future. So that's a possibility.
Thank you. Now, I think we have about 20 minutes or more, in which, of course, I want to focus 10 more minutes with few more questions on the lines we've already discussing, and probably for the last 10 minutes to open it for the audience to ask whatever pertinent questions they have. Now, I was looking at your annual report and you have had, I think, roughly 8 SDGs that you have said you are aligning with your work. I may be wrong, but with what I have as information. And this story of organizations looking at what they do and connect it to SDGs and putting it out, or it should be we target certain SDGs and look to make a difference. Where do you stand on this? Because my research area is a lot to do with plantation companies, and for them, their life is quite easy because they touch base on a lot of these SDGs. But although larger part of the annual reports target these SDG stories, talk about it, but are they really intentionally doing anything more, or just taking what they're doing and connecting to SDGs? Because even the wordings that even your report is having, not like I'm looking to criticize a particular company as such, but to critically look at our role, this aligning to that of, no, this is what we focus. It's not really a question, but an observation. Where do you stand on this?
First of all, I think there's something called, when it comes to this annual report, there are report writers. The report writers come and actually articulate what you do in the business and do this thing. I'm proud to say that these are our own writing. I think these are our own writing. The people who are in the business, people who are in this center functions, they write. I think I'm also part of this, and I'm proud to say that's part of the annual report. Then when it comes to this articulating this thing, it's we are not looking at the it's not a mean. I mean, we are looking at the means to end. I mean, we are looking at, okay, what is there? Then we actually look at what is our business model and how these things are interconnected. That means integrated business model, that's a starting point. Then if you look at that model that we put up in the annual report, right at the end only you can find this, how our alignment. Then we start from the input, we have a processes in place, then we have a governance structure, then our code of ethics. I think those things are entrenched and part and partial of this business model. Then when you come to the end, you will find this thing. It's not actually we look for these ESGs and actually align it through our DNA, through our part of the business. These are actually putting in play. I think that's a simple question I can give to you. That's how we looked at. I think sometimes you won't be able to compare and contrast this business model with some other organization, because these are integral part of us. These are part of our DNA. That's how we looked at this.
I think thank you for clearing that. But my thinking is, because we have 17 goals for 2030 aim, from 2015. We had 2022, already 2022 is also over. Since we have goals and everyone is insisting, why don't you incorporate? I kind of feel that we have our own goals in businesses, but eventually we go and just connect it to those goals. So I'm just trying to understand whether is there any possibility we start from some of these goals and try to achieve rather than look at what we are doing and connecting it to the goals.
I maybe try to answer it differently. There's a reason why this goal set up. No? I think that means they try to a commonality in understanding, like a taxonomy, because if you try to give different objectives, then people will look at so many different ways. Then I would think that this may be the framework that put up in the country as well as the larger, I mean, in the whole world in that sense, then they can actually have some sort of a understanding, thinking pattern, thinking cycle. Okay, look here, this is something that actually we can end it up with. If you look at poverty, I don't think we can do much about it. Now, I mean, as an organization, then we need to take it off. The wherever possible, I think we can capture it. Then it's easy for us to coming from accounting and finance, and you have to have a comparability. You know, then if I'm reporting and if John T is reporting and if I put up these objectives, then Aiken Pence also try to do it. Then there's a comparability there. Then if you look at it, if you try to as analysis.
I think just to interject there, I think you are looking from your hat. Yes, I understand that. And I think the ESG, the supposable standard that is supposed to come soon.
Yes.
And the task force recommendations, disclosure to the other standards. So those you have to be compatible. What I'm thinking is the sustainability goals are not really standards of disclosure. These are goals about where we want the world to go. So let me rephrase the question. Let's say that as a financial controller, you realize there are certain things that the organization can do to alleviate certain issues that are recognized with the sustainability goals. And you want to propagate that within your organization. What is your role in that propagation?
Yeah, I think, okay, I'll give you a few examples. I think I maybe start from little negative connotation. It's not doom and gloom. I think I'm borrowing from his word. He said that we are small country. I think if someone actually coming here and giving this capital, I think we can easily turn around. I mean, everything, economic situation and everything, that may be the thing that we look for with IMF. Then coming from that perspective, I may start at saying that, okay, look here, we have a crisis. Then again, I think these are not in public domain. We start something called a crisis response program. I think it's a big budget, this thing. Then we are not too interesting to put it up with the annual report and this thing that is already happening. I think it's connected few millions. I think it's closer to 200 million to be exact. Then it's crisis response. We found that, okay, look here, now we have to give the food to the people to start these other things. Then we said that, okay, look here, this particular year, we'll more focus on these crisis responses. Then, but our pillar is there, that woman empowerment, that where it's coming from. I mean, how we empower the woman, because we know that they are the vulnerable. Then there's a connotation with climate. I think, I mean, the moment that we empower the woman, there are so many positives are happening. I think that's the place that we are coming from. Maybe we are not do market as such, but these things are already happening. I think these are actually, how do I say, maybe it's already given, but we have to have some sort of a, how do I say, commonality in understanding, commonality in reporting. That's the reason that we build this ESG as well as SGD objectives.
So at group level, of course, you will do the reporting part, but driving this group level and to the group other subsidiaries of, you have to be more responsive, you need to be more proactive. From where is it that originated?
Yeah, that's a classic question, great question. We have something called risks champions, and we do have something called a sustainability champions. These are enriched to their role. For example, I don't know if they believe me or not, as a group financial controller, there's some elements I have to report for the sustainability. There's some element as a group financial controller, the role, not for me. Exactly the same way, there are risks champions. Sustainability champion are part and parcel of the businesses. Then they are being a part of the business, we call the that it's not a forum, it's a committee, the where that they discuss about, it's a bottom-up approach. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going to detail. The thing is, it's when it comes to the risks matrix, that if you look at John case, it's a bottom-up. We look at the risks at the bottom, for example, from the risk champions to sustainability champions, then we bring it up to the business level. Then we question, okay, look, whether there's any business risk there. Then that bring it up to our risk maze. Then that is actually going up to the audit committee level. I think we look at that whole heap of this thing. Very simply, we go to the lowest level to identify that risks, whether it's coming from which area, whether it's a department, whether it's an entity. Likewise, it's a very granular level analysis.
Already 2 mics used up.
This okay.
Yeah, thank you. It seems like what you're trying to say is there is a formalized process in place, and based on that, things are actually being done. Let me move to Richard, a quick one. I'm sure if there are champions placed within organization, with Richard's job profile, you must be the sustainability champion in your cluster. What do you really do as the champion there?
Excellent question. It's a very it's a very difficult question to answer directly. This is exactly what I do. Sustainability at Aiken Spence is a role where if nothing goes wrong, it's fine. Everything is fine. There's no risk. If the company is making profit, if the company is doing well, the reviews are good. If there's no negative press, like bad PR, the job is a piece of cake because everything has a system, everything has been done. It's almost on autopilot. But when things go wrong, like, or there's a crisis, that's when you're the most wanted person. So just to give you an idea of what.
And I think you must be having a dual reporting system also, because the group has a separate sustainability unit and your cluster must be having a separate one.
That's right.
Okay.
So it's very rare that you have a sustainability head specifically, because we have 20 properties and each property has I would say a coordinating role. The engineer or the general manager, or it's a dual role. But sustainability targets of the group is driven specifically to the properties through me or my division.
Thank you. Moving to Randev, now we know organizations are doing certain things, may not be the best. Surely with what is happening in our country, of course, we are constrained operational mode as such. But can marketeers, because your company, yes, you're a manufacturing company, but marketing is big. I guess your pricing strategy and probably the backlash tells us marketing is much more important. What can marketeers really do to take the message and maybe even differentiate? Because for me, I see Maliban, I see Munchie, I don't really see a difference in the packaging. I'm not really even sure 20 years back, I may have had affinity towards certain tastes, but probably not now. Maybe others feel differently, but I kind of feel that marketeers would have a bigger role to play, especially considering the kind of consumers that you attract in terms of taking the message of being environmentally more responsive, sensitive, more responsive to climate change. What do you think marketeers can do more?
Definitely, Sugit, marketeers has a big role to play in this. I mean, I will not confine it only to marketeers. It's to every individual has a bigger role to play in this entire equation. But the problem that we are, as I explained earlier, to be a green space, it's not easy and it's not cost effective at the moment, current situation. But I would like to highlight a point that in next decades, it will give you a license to operate. So previous decade, it's a technology. So if how fast you have done technology, how fast you were able to take up. I mean, in our whole management discussion, we were talking about Kodak, I mean, I don't need to tell all these examples. So next decade, it will be sustainability and environment for any of us to survive. It won't take about 100 years, like a couple of decades to see whether you're going to exist or not. So how I understand this climate change is like a cancer. So it's anyway in your body. To take long time to address it, get worse. So climate change is also something like that. Whether it's a company, whether it's a country, it's the same. So I think how I see all this thing, and as well as how as a company we would like to see is this need to be addressed, need to be taken, because it will give you license to operate in next couple of decades, at least the next decade. I mean, that's why you see Amazon is talking about being buttered and they could think that, okay, I already dominated. Why should I do something different? But everyone is talking about that. So it'll come to the marketeers, it'll come to production and everyone. So simply the license to operate.
So to maintain your social license, you will have to put this out. I think the real issue for marketers would be to figure it out how to incorporate that into what they normally do day to day.
And it'll change who will adopt this faster. We'll give the license to operate faster. So it's a change management. So when you change management, which company adopt it faster, whether it's companies do you mentioned and all of us, if you want to run this journey, so we all need to think differently, think ahead and today. If I may to add one point of view about SDGs you asked about previously, like about half a minute. So how we see SDG is a framework. If you fit that framework into business, certain elements have been already addressed. There's nothing wrong in that. And certain elements you need to focus and put effort. You have both elements. I mean, you find a plantation, certain elements have been already addressed because that's a business model. There's nothing wrong at all. Same time, you're giving the certain elements of aspects. Okay, guys, if you want to be more, there are certain elements you need to go. So to answer you, it need to have both elements. One already have in the business model. Some you need to start to grow your business case.
I think the advocates of climate change and sustainability probably would also argue you may have some of these, but you need to target few and really work hard on it and make it like your profit key objectives and do it. So that's another way to look at it, probably considering the urgency of this. Maybe that's the path we should take. Maybe our strategy making process shouldn't really start with our visions and missions of company, but more of the humanity side goals. Anyway, coming quickly back to Sanjeeva, you have been in this space of recycling, waste management, re-engineering and all that. If you can give, say, in 2 quick points, what is the message you can give to other industries who are not really in that space, where they also need to adopt this waste management to process re-engineering? Maybe 2 points, what they can do.
Good question. Holistically speaking, it's circular economy being understood by your business and bringing that aspect into your business model. We all spoke about business model. Circular economy is not a big concept. Like it's a simple concept where you eliminate your waste by putting your energy from regenerative source. Very simple way. There are many definition, but right mindfulness, knowing that he exactly spot on, like your license to continue the business would be a sustainability. Like you can have a small entrepreneur type of business, but if you are polluting backyard, you will not be able to operate. So my simple message for them to have good understanding on the business model that you are in. And again, that he said, to have a right understanding about your risk profile. And most of the companies I have seen, they are very good in identifying risk. But when it comes to risk monitoring, I think he spoke about like sustainability champion, etc. I think he spoke about like what matters more is in PDCA, US check and act part. I think check and act part, we have to strongly boost in companies so that I think every company can survive.
Thank you. Moving to the last question from me. Now, we all know the hard sciences on climate change, all this 1.5 degree story, we are not going to achieve anyway, and to all the catastrophes that are forecasted. But if you really think about actioning on climate change, it is the mind part, how people read this, how people interpret this, and how they want to really action. For example, at home, of course, I see a flood when I am traveling and my roads are flooded. I will talk climate change, and very worried. But when I'm inside the company, my payback is based on some financial targets. So what climate change? What role can HR play in changing that mindset so that people really realize every day you think about these targets that you are anyway living on is not really going to keep that long-term future for you or for your children. What role can HR play on that mindset change?
HR can play a bigger role because we shape the behavior of all in the organization. So we talk about triple bottom line, right? So we give more weightage to planet. Your whole focus would be towards the planet. So those little tweaks to your key performance areas can be done. And then your contribution, my fellow panelist Mohan was talking about women empowerment and the things that they do. So currently banks have put a KPI, how much of money have you lent to women entrepreneurs? So that because of that KPI, we see credit officers and bankers being interested in looking at proposals that are coming from women entrepreneurs. So similarly, we can drive the whole agenda through HR, but that is in organizations. But the bigger HR comes from the policymakers, and they have to also have drive KPIs. I'm happy I saw the same article on Sunday Times. If president can put the same KPIs to the ministers and cascade it down to the officers who are executing that, then we will have the plans. My colleagues will be able to act in synergy. Now, John Keel's hotels, Conference hotels can come up with their pricing and come up with common proposals if that whole framework is done by Ministry of Tourism. Without that common arm or framework or laws and regulations shaping that industry, we are talking individually and the impact is very less. So that's what I said, capacity development itself takes a bigger responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that concludes from our side straight up, but from audience, any questions? I'm sure our panelists are eagerly waiting to hear a different voice, a different line of questioning, I suppose. Over to the audience.
When we take climate problems, we find that at each stage, macro level to micro level, many organizations should be responsible for that. For example, government, provincial government, then the individuals, the entrepreneurs and all that. So taking all those parties together, is it possible for you to give or propose or prescribe one sort of common strategy or common solution that can be applied to all three sides? Can you think of such a strategy or measurement?
Yes, I think I'll take that answer first and give my colleagues to elaborate on it. As I mentioned in my last thing, the policy framework has to come from the legislature. That is the parliament. We can't.
More than that.
Right.
Something like philosophy.
Okay.
So is it to do with leadership? Who's going to take the leadership on running this?
I will tell you.
Yes.
I think like this, for example, if you take that the Mahavali project, that is earlier it was designed to complete within 30 years, right? Then it became a crash Mahavali project to be completed within 5 years, right? Because of that, big environmental, pollution, so many problems created because of that. The reason is they, they didn't follow that, the concept of philosophy called small is beautiful. Small is beautiful. They thought that the large is beautiful, right? So it applies, it can be applied even to, protect your climate, protect your environment, whether you are government, provincial government, or micro level entrepreneur, right? We must tell them what sort of appropriate technology they should follow. Appropriate technology means, another meaning of that is small is beautiful.
Just if I may to tell, I mean, question is very simple, but answer is not simple. So we have many issues like that, not only the environment. I mean, look at after having a crisis, we can't find a solution together as a country. So yes, there's no simple solution for those issues, very complicated matters, because that's what this COP is trying to get at in the global level, and to see where the world is need to move on. So that it's not a local issue, this is a global issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point probably is we can always look for big ticket items, big projects. And I think our president is also going and asking for money to do all of that. The question is, what can we do in our own capacities? But if this larger thought process also comes on board, and not really what the global people are talking, but a localized situation and how we want to take forward, probably this university proposal they have for climate change and the new secretariat coming in, the intentions are those, but I think as long as they alienate the industry and the other people who are of interest to this, and they come up with independent solutions, nothing good will come out of it. So yeah, something like that, yeah.
Maybe quickly, if I understood the question correctly, that what, so you spoke about institutional integrated sort of a mechanism to tackle with these things. If I understood correctly, but it will be very difficult. We have very good practical example. In Sri Lankan context, it's very difficult because there are many domains they don't want to come out. But somebody has to really push and class it to various means. If you want to have a very holistic way of looking things in and getting into the subject to see the bigger picture, then only I'm sure the smaller will be really beautiful.
Yeah, very quickly, I'm not, I didn't take sides of any political party. I think before this particular regime, there's a regime came now with this different professionals came together and things like that. After every key minister, there was a think tank we call. There are professionals get together. The thing is, I think they are the people who try to drive this thought process. I mean, small, beautiful. I can remember there were some environmentalists joined there. I think she's a professor. She's actually coming from certifying even villages. You could certify village. I think you are carbon, zero carbon. I think you can go to that level of this. And then as a part of, you can entrenched hotel there. Then that hotel also certified. Likewise, I think there are so many good things came. This issue is the procrastinations and the things that fallen through the cracks, but didn't actually see the light. I think we started so many good things, but the thing is when you put it to the action, I think we are well shortfall. I think there's a problem there.
Any further questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mohal, this question for you. This is like when it's come to research. So our students, they engage with like, finance related research. They engage with, finding the impact of the climate risk on firm performances and climate risk on stock market performances. So the quantitative results, it shows that there is an impact from the climate risk to the investment decisions. Even like the very recent research which we completed by one of our team. So that was at international level. So we consider the energy sector by covering many companies from different regions, where we focus on the climate risk on cost of capital. So the result shows like the companies into the high climate risk category, so they have a high cost of capital. So my question is whether the company is really concerned on this matter, whether as a companies they do invest their projects, their company money in these projects where I can reduce the climate risk, or what is the reality Because the quantitative result shows that way. What do you think about that, the qualitative aspects?
Anyway, we have to know, I think it's starting from him, he clearly said that it's license to operate. I think that's a starting point. I may now wearing the chair of sustainability standard committee chair. There's a sustainability standard to come. I think then it's inevitable. The question is now, we are still, I'm sorry, I'm breaking the news. We are going to the regulators at the moment. We are talking to SLAS-MB, SEC, CSC, how this particular piece fitting into the annual report. We need to look at the quoted public companies in the first phase. Then SLAS-MB we call as SBEs, specified business organizations. The moment that we put these kind of a the key thing is now this is the sustainability standard generated by IFRS. That's a apex accounting body. Keep in mind that's an accounting body come up with a sustainability standard. It's not GRI. It's not other affiliated what you call organizations. The moment these things are coming to the play, firstly, you may go with a, how do I say, voluntary disclosure, obviously. Then the second year or other year after, you will go with this thing as a maybe top tier companies like a mandatory disclosures. Then it's something inevitable, no? I mean, inevitable that you need to invest these kind of thing. Otherwise, you won't be able to show the results. Then when you try to compare John Keels with Aitkens, if you are not doing these kind of a thing, our comparability when it comes to the institutional shareholders, they obviously pick Aitkens. Why they're doing great in these kind of initiatives. Then your point is the cost of capital. Then they look for these kind of initiatives. They actually put the money. I mean, coming from banking institution, now the green bonds are there, SEC, CSA, now they're actually thinking of this green financing. Then this particular piece coming to the picture with a reduction of the cost of capital. Then obviously, then people love to have the money, no? Then they will put into the play and earn more money, and that's how the business will run. I don't know whether I answered the question. That's how the dynamics works at the moment.
I think we can take one more question, please.
Can I ask?
We go
Right.
for two then.
Okay, as you asked, actually now we started this green HR in 2016. Actually, we had green HR day also. In celebration of that day, you can see down there in the left hand side there is a Beit Nilligak. The tree is now matured one. And we have done some research under me, one PhD study and also 2 masters and few undergrads. And we have a unit also, and some of our members are also actually undertaking the green HR, this thing. But the thing is, what I got from the students, even from the industry, is the reluctance of industries to share some information, even sharing the name. Now we are talking about Toyota failures directly here, but we can't take any failure case from the industry, right? So as you all mentioned, the capacity enhancement is the key, because the management is basically utilizing just go against this sustainability. You trying to exact more with lesser. So that means people don't want to be sustainable. So as you very correctly mentioned, the capacity enhancement is the key. But the trends in the US, the corporates, even in Sri Lanka, corporates and government, the investment in HRD, education training, is declining. That's the scenario, except few cases here. So I just want to suggest from you. Now, I think you have to consume a lot of science-based knowledge. Now, HR, many people say it's a gut feeling thing, but I don't believe HR is not a gut feeling thing. So you have to based on research. So there is a proposal. Are you willing to undertake research with the universities? So if it is the case, now we have management, accounting, finance, all. So we are ready to come and shop each and every company, right? Now we have 5 companies here. Will you give us some research projects from your ends to us to undertake? Right, that's my question. It's a proposal actually.
So how I see is, yes, answer is yes, but it's a two-way communication. I will not open my doors and say, okay, come and check whether anything is there. I think this is my general view. everywhere I see this, academics and companies need to work together more closely. We see in certain segment like engineering sector and maybe if marketing we working, other sectors also need to work. We need to show it's important us. I mean, you will not come if there's anything else to get it from us. It has to be either way also with due respect. So I think we need to have this dialogue going on and to see that, okay, if I will not waste my time by opening it if I don't see that person can add value and give a solution. So same way, it's for you also. You will not just come because there's nothing much to take it. I think that it's a journey we need to start more and more than what we do today. Fully agree.
I think as a faculty also, Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, this industry linkage sales we are starting, not that we are just starting, it had been there for a while, but I think we all need to pitch in a bit more and activate those and connect. Would you want to?
Yes, I think that's a very important thing. The academia and the business community has to get in touch, especially in this under this topic. We need to do research and understand where we can do things right. I personally had this experience when we wanted to introduce ESRM practices and ESM curriculum into the learning agenda in the bank. I had to approach a couple of universities to understand whether there is a competent person who can come and do that lecturing process for us and develop the curriculum, because obviously we did have, when we studied our courses, we did have these green HRMs to how all these concepts are newly developed. So we had to read a lot, McKinsey reports, Deloitte reports, all that we went through, and still we wanted that academic endorsement, and so that our curriculum will be accepted by leading organizations. So in that, one particular university helped us, but that also, I think, if the other universities contributed, we could have come up with a frameworks that could be used by the entire banking industry. So that's yes, sir. And your answer to that is, if my colleague said, if you come up with a good proposal, we are willing to join with the university and assist.
Thank you, Lilanti. I think into the future, you don't have to shop around. You have the people you can go and always talk. One last question, Ajit sir. Yeah, go ahead. Quick one.
It's very informative discussion, and actually I also learned a lot. And the letter that central bank sent to you is not that they just wanted to inculcate climate change practices loans, because they're just exposing, like many companies, private companies, to IMF grant. If they don't send that, they will not get. That is one of the criteria, right? No plan, no proper funding, nothing. They just send the letter. Same thing like other companies also. That's a sad thing. Like companies go to these climate change practices because either they are exposed to the overseas market, they have no choice. You need to sell your products, or else you need to access to funding. And that's a fundamental mistake. And then you try to meet, one or two guidelines of, they're given by the world bodies, to inculcate and show and put it in the annual report and go for awards and get a mileage also on that. See, this thinking need to be changed. Three of you all were talking about evolving, the climate change to a new level, this and that. We should add these things. Actually, we have evolved from the basics to up to now. That evolution has, killed the climate. And now you're again talking, going back with another evolution. No, it is going back, can't be an evolution, Right. As Mohan, I think very correctly said, you need to inculcate this into your business model, the ecosystem. But unfortunately, we don't see that. You add one or two elements and then see, we are adhering to that. 99% of the companies are like that. So we just talk, the new concepts will come, green, green HR, green marketing. When we teach those, we become blue, because those are just names for the sake of, there's no readiness at all. So my question is, given that background, whether our companies are seriously looking at building, a bigger ecosystem for this, at least within your limitations, instead of, giving solution for small patches to meet the requirement of the world bodies just because you're a customer or you need funding. That's all.
Odd question. Anyone wants to take it?
I think to answer it in general, if you don't, you won't survive. Simple as that. Like companies here have large legacies of decades and decades, years. Time will answer that question. I would think. Whether the company will survive or whether the company will be no more. If you don't incorporate what we all mentioned about climate change and the responsibility that each individual employee has towards the environment.
That's obvious. But are we doing something prior to that? That's the whole issue. Or are we waiting till others do and you have no choice but to go ahead? Or are we seriously, our companies are seriously looking at from the beginning itself to adhere to that? And she was talking about, having women empowering, giving loans to, as KPIs. I mean, who killed the microfinance industry for women? Our banking system killed and destroyed the entire thing. And now again talking and, giving this thing.
I may add something. I think it's, very simple thing is better to have something than nothing. I mean, that's a starting point. The other thing is you are spot on. Then people try to do this thing as a award-winning thing and so on and so forth. But the thing is, the moment that you live by those values, I think we have to start from the whole hierarchy of the value system. I think HR going to play massive role there. Then I think I like his question. I'm sorry, I'm moving here and there, but I'll come to your point. You said that whether you see that customer shifting, or other employee shifting from values, better to keep that question, ask that question 10 years time, same hole, the answer would be different. You know why? The newer generation, they are well equipped with these things. I think my small one, I'm going back to her, her essays. She started essay in grade 6, something called Great Pacific Garbage Patch. You ever heard that kind of a thing in my age? No, I'm not ever heard of that kind of a thing at that age. My point is, I think that people are moving towards that. I think the DNA, they are inculcating this DNA for the school system. These are not in international schools. These are actually local schools that are teaching these kind of things. The good thing is better to have these discussions, better to have these reiterations, better to have these things that come into play where it's come, whether it's international, whether it's locally driven, whatever form and shape, best that we bring up. At least the moment that you are having these kind of initiatives, that the more it will enrich to your DNA. I think I'm going back to your question. Best that we start from the value hierarchy. Okay, you start from the value hierarchy, ask your employees to live by those values. Forget about the awards, forget about these things. You can live by those values. Then the smaller person will try to change in their territory. Okay, look here, these are the things that they have to do. Very small act. When the vision is given by the leadership, okay, look here, you need to look at the bigger thing. That small bit and pieces actually will get together and get into that bigger change. I think that's my question. Sorry, I deviated, but that's how I look at it.
Thank you. For the sake of time, let me try to wind down things. I think I was trying to push you also on that same line. I apologize for putting you on a spot on that, whether it should be more reporting of what you do aligned to SDGs, or SDGs starting as a belief system and driving the organization. I think in different words, we are looking at that. Are we there? Of course not. Can we do more? Of course, yes. But what's the path seems to be the bigger question. But I think climate change tells us, all of us, one message. Personally, this is how I feel. There is nothing called Mohan, the JKH, or Randiva, CBL. We are in the side of humanity. As long as we are in the sides of our companies, University of Kelaniya, academia, industry, we are losing sight of the bigger issue. So thank you very much, Mohan, Randiva, Ilanti, and Sanjeeva, and Richard, for gracing this occasion. It has been an absolute privilege to be among you and to actively converse on this topic. And I hope that this conversation will spur our members to look at this in a positive manner, do bigger role. And also, even when you go back to your companies, maybe look at this beyond the roles that you normally engaged in. So thank you very much. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your valuable contributions. And that was an extremely fruitful discussion that we could able to hear. And with that, I think we have come into the end of today's session, the technical forum of 13th International Conference on Business and Information, the ICBI 2022. And I think we need to appreciate your valuable contributions. And I think now we're going to hand over the token of appreciation. So I would like to invite Dr. P.N.D. Fernando, Dean of the Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies, University of California, and he will be followed by Dr. Saroja Vanigasekara, the co-chair of ICBI 2022. First of all, I would like to invite Mr. Mohan Tantrike to accept the token of appreciation. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Randiva Malasurya. I would like to invite Ms. Lilanti Delgoda. And next in line, we have Mr. Sanjeeva Chulakumara. Next, I cordially invite Mr. Rishad Prina. And the moderator of the day, Dr. Sugit Patabandige. Thank you so much, Dr. Sugit, for making the forum even more fruitful and for your valuable contribution. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. And I need to mention that this is not an effort of a person. Actually, it is a collective effort of all the 5 departments of the Faculty of Commerce and Management Studies. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be back with the rest of the sessions of 13th International Conference on Business and Information. Thank you. And there is one announcement for you all. The lunch is ready at G3 Hall, so you can enjoy the lunch as well.